Some time ago, I brought a video here on the channel where I showed you several differences between the GTA 5 trailers and the final version that was released. And it's really cool to watch these videos because now with the huge hype around the GTA 6 trailers, especially now with the second trailer, we start to think like everything we're seeing in the trailer and how faithful it will be to the final version. Because trust me, there will be a lot of differences just like I showed in the first video. This video today is a part 2, basically a direct continuation of the other video I had done. That being said, no more delays, just hit the like button and let's get started. Let's start by looking at trailer 1 first. In trailer 1, there are some differences. Remember that there are a lot more differences in total than I will show in this video because I already did a part 1 of this video. So like you will probably notice more differences, but they will most likely be in video 1. Okay, so make sure to click on the final screen. The first thing you can notice here in trailer 1, if you zoom in really quick, you can see that Franklin's face looks a bit different. You can especially notice this when he's inside the red car, the one that is stolen in the mission Franklin and Lamar that he ends up stealing at the beginning. And then in the trailer, he stops for a woman to pass in front. When you zoom in there, right on Franklin's face, and also at other moments during this same trailer, you can see that his face was a little different, not so different from the final version, but different indeed. And he was also a bit chubby, you know, with a rounder face looking like a cookie. Another interesting point that we see in this trailer is that there is a moment where people are doing yoga. And I have a strong impression that it's right at Martin Madrazo's house, that house up on the hill that we take down and so on. I'm not entirely sure just by looking at the trailer, but probably a side-by-side comparison would give us more certainty. And there are no NPCs doing yoga there. It would be really cool if Michael could go there to do yoga because he has a spot up in Mount Gordo, like to do yoga in the middle of the mountain. And here, this place that appeared in the trailer, you can't go there to do that. Third thing I noticed in this trailer here that I don't know if you guys noticed, but compared to the version we had on the PlayStation 3, for me there was a high population density here, both in terms of cars and people and so on. I thought there was a lot of stuff that didn't make it, you know, like the amount of NPCs or the number of vehicles that should be there according to what is shown on the map, especially also in trees and so on, but I also mentioned that in the first video. So this issue of population density makes me think that this first trailer of GTA 5, it wasn't recorded on an Xbox 360 or a PlayStation 3 because this density was reduced due to hardware limitations, so like probably this part here they were recording on a PC. So the next item we can see in this same zoom here, where we can see a bunch of NPCs leaning against the wall, is this. There's a car in front, a gray car, that to me, I'm pretty sure, man, it's almost identical to Trevor's car. I don't remember any other vehicle that looks so much like this one, but it really is very similar. And there are two things that can explain this. The first thing is that at this point in the trailer, the characters' personal cars, right, like Michael's, Trevor's, and Franklin's cars, wouldn't be exclusive to the characters, and NPCs would also be using them on the streets. Either Trevor's personal car at this point wasn't defined yet, or it wasn't this vehicle. I don't know. Maybe it would be another one. And you'll see that this is quite common. For example, Michael's car will change a bit further on. And lastly, in this trailer here, the last difference I noticed was an NPC holding a sign on the ground, you know, showing, you know, a somewhat lively world and so on. And this part here, I don't remember ever seeing in the game, seriously, like never. I've seen these signs, but I've never actually passed by and seen an NPC putting a sign there. I don't know if you guys understand what I mean. Now, moving on to trailer 2, we can also see a difference in Michael's car. Here we have a zoom that shows Michael's house, which supposedly would be Amanda and Michael down on the court. Then it shows a car in front of the house. This car is an Obey 9F, if I'm not mistaken, that's the name, I'm not very sure. And everything indicates that this is the car. It was Michael's personal vehicle, at least up to this point in the game development. I don't think it would belong to Amanda because Amanda's red car, which is used in the mission Father-Son, appears in this trailer. So I think Amanda's car was already set. However, I believe Michael's car would be this one. I highly doubt that this would be Jimmy or Tracy's car. So I don't know, Michael would have more of a businessman profile and so on. Also, a little further on, there's that scene from the mission Father and Son where he's getting the drink and so on, and then he's going to talk to Franklin. After putting on the music to listen and all, he's going to talk to Franklin. And the difference here from the final version is that simply here he's in a classic pair of shorts and shirtless, and in the final, like in-game version, he's in regular clothes, which is kind of a sunny outfit, wearing sunglasses as well and so on. After that, we have a scene, guys, that kind of like shows a race. Judging by the car we're seeing here, it's that mission I Fought the Law, you know, where we go with the red car and all. And what it shows me here, at least what's different from the final version, is that in the I Fought the Law mission from the final version, we have this car that Franklin drives in red, and that blue car that's in front of us usually for most of the mission, which is a cheetah. It also crashes into other vehicles, if I'm not mistaken. In the final version, it doesn't crash into anyone. It goes like drives really smoothly and all that. And also when we have Trevor's introduction, which is that mission where he ends up killing Johnny Klebitz. In the first one, we can also see the characters from the back, like Wade and Ron, and you you can get an impression, at least I don't know about you guys, that Ron, he was a bit more of a country guy, you know? He also has a tattoo on his arm, but he had a slightly more country style than the final version, you know? The version that arrived in the end kind of looks like he's more of an older guy, a bit of that vibe, I don't know, anyway. And the last detail in this video, which I found pretty cool to bring to you guys, a difference actually quite big. Instead of having a buzzard helicopter here at the end, because in the trailer there is a buzzard here, which is the missile helicopter. In the final version, what we have here is a regular helicopter. It's so regular that Trevor gets it as payment for the job from the FIB. So this buzzard here that appears in the trailer doesn't make it to the final version. Guys, it's really crazy to notice these details that I'm showing you here, because even when we watch the trailer today, if you're not pausing and looking very carefully, usually you don't notice these differences. One part that I almost forgot to mention about this trailer is when Michael is sitting by the pool. In that part where he was supposed to talk to Franklin, he ends up listening to music. In the final version of the game, unlike in this trailer, he's wearing headphones, listening to his favorite music. And up to that point, it's all good, pretty much no difference there. It's more to talk about this headphone issue, because there's a lot of emphasis on headphones in the GTA 6 trailer, and screenshots which suggest that we'll be able to listen to music in GTA 6 without needing to be in a vehicle, etc. because of the headphones. Remember that Michael has already been seen listening to music in the game and all. However, this wasn't actually available as a function within the game. I really believe it will be available in GTA 6, but it may not be because, anyway, in the final version of the game, he's shown using headphones during a cutscene, but you can't actually use them in gameplay. It could be a hardware limitation, maybe an idea that Rockstar wanted to implement but couldn't at that time. Now, going straight to Michael's trailer, we're going to have some differences as well. Let's go. There's that scene from the mission where Michael is betting on the race with Jimmy there on the pier. And what's the difference we have here from the trailer to the final version in this case? In the trailer version, which is a cutscene here, Jimmy is with Michael pedaling along a path, which would actually be a cheat in the game. In the final game, if you take this path here, instead of following what's on the map down there, Jimmy will end up calling you a cheater. However, here in the cutscene, Jimmy is following the same path as Michael. So I don't know if at this point in the cutscene there wasn't yet like a defined route and such, or maybe this line of dialogue from Jimmy hadn't been built yet. Moving on to the part of the mission, Blitz Play. In the final version of the game, it's Franklin who places this sticky bomb here. However, here we can see that it's Michael who does it. And on top of that, Michael is wearing a gas mask here, which I don't remember being in the final version. At least it's not a gas mask, if I'm not mistaken. It's a pig mask or a ski mask, whichever you choose, but it's not necessarily a gas mask. A little further ahead, we also see that scene of Michael hitting Fabienne when he goes to meet Amanda. I don't know if you guys remember that. And then when we take a closer look, Fabienne is wearing the standard outfit he always wears. Actually, I don't think it's even his standard outfit. But anyway, it's not quite the Fabienne we're used to seeing. I think even his hair is shorter, if you zoom in, you know? At least that's the impression I got. And he looks a little different from the final version, but it's just a matter of a character model difference. So another slight difference there is when Michael is going to break Jimmy's TV. In the final version of the game, Jimmy is playing there, I think it's Righteous Slaughter, the name of the game. And here he's watching like a burger advertisement. And then, well, after that, like right after that, there's a part that I found really interesting. It's like Michael lying on the bed, you know, to rest or something like that, dealing with various life problems and so on. However, there's no bed like that here, at least that's what I remember. Michael's bed isn't like that inside his room and all, so maybe he was lying on Jimmy's room or someone else's, but I don't remember seeing that bed here, and much less that cutscene in the middle of the game. And finally, man, there's one here that's really intense, which is the following. We have this scene here showing them entering the jewelry store to rob it, probably in the loud version where they used balaclavas and such. I had already talked about this in another video on the same topic. However, that's not the point. The point here is that after that, it cuts to a scene from the prologue where Michael, he grabs the money there in the prologue, right at the beginning of the game, you know, where he puts the gun aside and grabs that cash and puts it in the bag. And then, like, a lot of people might say it's just a representation that Michael would also be in the prologue, but then we have two differences. Either this scene here would also happen in the jewelry heist, because you can notice that Michael, he's wearing basically the same clothes that he was wearing in the jewelry store robbery, or the outfit in the prologue would be different from the one that came out in the final version, because in the final version, Michael is not wearing that outfit in the prologue, you know? If you look and redo the prologue mission, you'll see that he's not wearing that outfit. So I don't know, something's a little different, and it was kind of used there to imply that in the jewelry heist, you would take money and not jewels. And this will be a little more highlighted in another trailer later on. I'll show you guys. And now moving on to Franklin's trailer, there's a moment here that at least gave me the impression that the strippers could also dance outside the private area, you know? Like, you pay the stripper there, and she dances right there. At least that's the impression I got, but it could be that, I don't know, it could be completely unrelated. Also, there's a scene with Franklin and Lamar fist bumping, you know? Like, giving each other a little tap on the hand. And that scene inside the strip club, well, it doesn't actually exist. That scene, it exists in the mission Lamar Down, where Franklin ends up rescuing Lamar and all that. So this animation, it would happen here, you know, like maybe in the beta version of the game, Franklin would end up rescuing Lamar and taking him to the strip club, and then this cutscene would play. Or I don't know, maybe the guys took the animation and duplicated it in there, I don't know. All I know is that it was something different because it doesn't exist in the final version of the game. Furthermore, a little further ahead, we see Franklin escaping from the police, supposedly after the jewelry heist. Well, not supposedly, I'm pretty sure it's the jewelry heist, judging by the clothes and the bike and all. However, we noticed that this place here, it's not part of the standard escape route for the jewelry heist. You kind of have to follow the other bikers, and then if you follow them, you won't go through this part here, as shown in the trailer. Right after that scene, we have a scene from the mission, The Long Stretch. And the only thing that is different here in the Long Stretch mission that I think you guys, actually I think almost no one noticed, is that instead of having that old car, that I don't know if it's Lamar's or Stretch's, that we used to go to this mission, in reality, Franklin's car is back there. If you zoom in there, like on the front fender of Franklin's car, you'll see that it's still pretty poorly done, you know, like poorly modeled, not well done yet, but it's completely different from the final version. Both the different car and the car that should be here are different. So anyway, there's also a difference in the Long Stretch mission, and there's a dialogue line at the end from this The Long Stretch mission that is out of context. Lamar says he's looking more and more like a snitch, and here in the trailer, it's at a certain time on the map in a certain location. And in the final version of the game, it's completely different. It happens in a different way. The trailer for Trevor, it has very few differences compared to the others, mainly because I brought a lot of differences from Trevor's trailer in the other video, but one here that you can notice is that in the trailer when Trevor was going to call Ron, you know, I think when that mission light turbulence starts, which is when they are going to live in Sandy Shores for a while. Hiding from Martin Madrazo, Trevor, he's without any tattoos. In fact, without the tattoo he got in honor of Michael's death, which is kind of strange. I don't know if that issue with Michael's death tattoo was added afterwards. At least that's what it seemed to me. And a little further ahead, there's a scene of Amanda arguing with Michael. If I'm not mistaken, it's in the mission Did Somebody Say Yoga? I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think it's in this mission where Amanda tells like Trevor's monster to stay away from them. And then Michael and Amanda kind of have a discussion, and then in the cutscene of this trailer, Amanda's wearing swimwear, or as if she had just come out of the pool or the shower. I would venture to say it was the pool. However, in the final version, she's wearing normal clothes. But the cutscene itself is 100% the same, like nothing changes, except for Amanda's outfit. After that, we have the gameplay trailer. And the gameplay trailer, we will have some differences as well. Actually, it has many, so it's divided between this video and the previous one. But the first one here is about Franklin when he's talking there with Simeon. Simeon tells him like what he can have or what he can't have in the mission Repossession. And what's cool to see here is that in the final version of the game, behind Franklin, where that Employee of the Month plaque would be, it should be Franklin in the photo. And here in this cutscene, it was still Simeon. So that was changed later. Or simply, when the guys were recording this cutscene, they ended up recording it in a version where the plaque had already been replaced because it was initially Franklin's. And as soon as you finish this mission, it becomes Simeon's plaque. A little further ahead, we have a dialogue that occurs in the mission Blitz Play, which in the final version does not happen in the mission Blitz Play. That's pretty interesting. We have the three characters up on this roof. When that heist is happening, the player heist. And then Trevor, if I'm not mistaken, he says something like, and now what do we do? Or like, do we just move on with life and stuff? And this scene here with this specific animation and this specific dialogue, they are not from this mission in the final version of the game. They are from Option C mission when they throw the car off the cliff. And then Trevor asks like, and now what do we do? So this one was a big deception, man. This scene here really doesn't exist in the final game. It ended up in the last mission.
So now what? So now what?
Also, at a certain point in the game, in a scene transition from Michael, you can quickly see Michael's minimap with several M letters as mission markers. So I believe that at this point in the game, all of Michael's missions would be marked with the letter M, Franklin's missions only with the letter F, and Trevor's with the letter T. However, I think it may have been a bit confusing, and it's better the way it is now, because like when it's Solomon's mission, he marks it with an S. When it's Lester's mission, he marks it with an L, and so on. The final version turned out much better. A little further ahead, we have Michael diving into the mission Monkey Business. You know, he's right there near Humane Labs and hits to dive down. This scene here actually is at night, and when we do this, we're with Dave Norton and Steve Haynes. It could be that at the time of recording, Steve Haynes and Dave Norton were already in the water, as marked on the minimap. However, in any case, it's a heist that happens at night. The game waits for nightfall so we can execute it and all. Now, we're going to take another look at the jewelry store heist. There was already an inconsistency shown in the previous trailer, and in this one, the inconsistency will be even more noticeable, especially when it comes to the prologue, man. Because what what's the difference we're going to see here, which is a bit bigger? The guys, they enter here now already wearing helmets, just like in the final version, you know, with the suits and helmets, etc. However, right after that, we have that same prologue scene, and now we can clearly see Michael with the helmet. In other words, wearing the outfit he wore during the jewelry store heist. We're seeing an identical animation from the prologue, which doesn't exist in the final version of the jewelry store heist. And this scene here that we're seeing was actually moved to the prologue of GTA 5. When they enter the vault, Michael grabs the money, and it's basically this animation here. I can put it on the side for you to see. While in the jewelry store heist, we're just collecting the jewels and putting them in the bag, and then we leave. There's no animation, you know, quite like this one. And last but not least, we have the official trailer of GTA 5. Well, not really last. There's actually one more trailer that we're going to check out, which has a little twist. But finally, we have this official GTA 5 trailer. And we also have some differences in this one. The first difference is that Trevor has a moment in the game where he starts banging his head there. I think it's because the Merryweather heist goes wrong. And in the trailer, there's no blood. However, in the final version, there is blood, but it's a very silly difference. Another thing that we also need to differentiate here is that we also see the vault explosion in North Yankton. However, the vault explosion in North Yankton in the prologue is like much more wow, you know, like the screen shakes and everything. And here it's a much more chill, more stable thing, you know. After that, there's another difference that to me is at the end of the derailed mission. Actually, not to me, it's pretty much a certainty. It's at the end of the derailed mission. And so the difference here at the end of the derailed mission is that Trevor's car is supposedly there in the back. Ron, in fact, he leaves two random cars there for Michael and Trevor. But in this version here, at least from what we're seeing, it's Trevor's car in the background. Maybe it wasn't in the final version because it's a little different from what we played. Also, you can't see Michael's car, and it seems to be in another location, like it doesn't seem to be on that part of the beach. I dare say that this is in another place. Also because you can hardly see that antenna back there, you know, when you look at that scene. Anyway, another thing that also happens, which to me is in the heist of the FIB, in the FIB heist in the firefighters version, for those who remember, for those who have done this heist a lot, you have to go down through the elevator shaft while pieces of the building are falling and such. And here we are wearing the firefighter outfit. However, in the game trailer here, we are not wearing this firefighter outfit. We are wearing the outfit we used to do the FIB on the rooftop version. So maybe the rooftop version of the FIB had some part where you had to escape this way. Or maybe this is just an error or a development thing. Anyway, I don't know what's going on. But this makes me think about new possibilities for the subtle FIB heist. And lastly, the final trailer here that we're going to take a look at, it's the announcement trailer for PlayStation 4 actually, for GTA 5, for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC. And the only difference here, guys, that I'm gonna say that I noticed that kind of didn't match the final version was the population density. That even makes you question to see if this was really in the PS4 version. I believe the guys were working on the PC version. As it's written here in the title, there's nothing wrong because we can see here, I think there are about 6 or 7 sharks, like in a very small area. And you can't see that in your PS4 version. I think not even on the computer, even if you set the density to the maximum. And a little further ahead as well, we have some parts showing NPCs, you know, like in the city or something like that. The amount of cars is quite absurd. So I think this trailer here, it just had a little bit of a lie. I think it was a bit forced in this population density issue. It seems like there are a lot of cars, a lot of NPCs. If you take some specific zooms, it's a pretty absurd thing, something we don't have in the final version. And if you're thinking that you've already seen a lot of differences here and felt deceived by the GTA 5 trailer, imagine finding out that Franklin's aunt, Denise, would have a much bigger gangster role in this game. And it was cut in the final version, but we could still see it. Click here next to the arrow to watch part 1 of this video here, which is only 2 parts. I'm sure you're going to love it. It's really good. And this already makes us question whether GTA 6 will really come out, wanting the trailers or not. That's it, guys. Thanks for the success. Take care, and we'll see you in the next video.